All right. So we are here, I think we're at Emerge episode 5. We kind of lost track of how many we've done so far with BioLink. So we have Matt and Zach here today. So thanks a lot for being here
No problem.
today. So usually how we start is kind of talking about what happened in the entrepreneurial community this past week. So I know for me, we had an interesting thing yesterday with Dunlap and Seeger here. So they were talking about intellectual property, which might have been interesting actually for your group, but they're hopefully coming back once a month to do things. They talked about kind of what the difference was between trademarking, patents, copyrights, and trade secrets. So it was kind of interesting.
Okay, that's cool. That would be fun to bring them in.
Yeah, and it's so like nuanced, you know, the difference between those things. And I don't know, I was thinking about like, so with, I didn't realize there was common law. So like with trademarking and stuff and copyrights, like it made me think about science, right? So you write all your lab notebooks and you're supposed to sign and date them, which nobody does at all anymore. But it's funny how some things in science are so advanced and other things are like so old school. Like still writing in paper notebooks and
Or forgetting to write in paper notebooks.
forgetting to write in paper notebooks. I think the last lab I was in was actually the first one we had like electronic notebooks.
I finally
And
got our lab to start switching. It's been amazing. But
yeah,
yeah.
it's a huge benefit, I think, just because everything's there and, you know, you don't have to sift back through all this stuff and it's actually accurately dated by the computer if you forget to do it. So yeah, I think that's kind of the crazy part about science. Like some of it's so advanced and some things we're still writing in paper and counting on people to do it and be accurate about it. But anyway, anything you guys have to add about this week in entrepreneurship?
So this week, Matt and I had a meeting with a group that is experienced in helping founders turn their ideas into products and into companies.
Okay.
Because we feel that's something that's been lacking in Rochester. The common, and Mayo Clinic, all in various locations, the common tagline is a lot of ideas come out of the Mayo Clinic, but very few companies.
Sure.
Because there's very few entrepreneurs, and so we're trying to bring in people that can help change that that culture. So we met with a team called New Lion, which they're most experienced in helping software developers and app developers turn their rough ideas, rough sketches into companies. But we think that their experience could be brought into Mayo to help turn all these tech ideas into companies too.
Yeah, I'm sure that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But it's
it was
true, you
fun.
hear about all these ideas and then how do you translate them out or translate them into a tangible product, which is kind of what you guys are doing with BioLinks.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about what BioLinks is for people who might not be familiar?
So BioLinks is a community meeting group trying to find anybody within Mayo Clinic, within the Rochester community that's interested in entrepreneurialism and wants to learn more about it. It sprung out of this idea from when, actually one of the other hats I wear is working as one of the board of a new startup company called Life Engine Technologies.
Okay.
And so the original BioLinks idea came from this guy, Jared Campbell, who started BioLinks and founded this company, Life Engine, worked as the CEO and is now working as the COO of the company. And he wanted to find more people in Rochester that were interested in entrepreneurialism.
Mm-hmm.
So he started this seminar, discussion, journal club kind of group. And since then, it's been run by a couple different people. And BioLinks, in addition to being this at least monthly, if not more often, meeting group, sprung out this idea of kind of riffing off of Shark Tank and starting our own pitch competition, which we called Walleye Tank, because it's the Minnesota spirit of it. And BioLinks helps to facilitate recruiting for Walleye Tank, getting people interested in Walleye Tank, and helping to run the Mayo Grad School Associated course that helps prep people for entrepreneurialism and pitch competitions like Walleye Tank.
Sure, so your next entrepreneurial class within Mayo, that started already or that's starting soon?
We're recruiting for it right
You're
now.
recruiting for it, okay. And
Yeah.
the next Walleye Tank, the ice fishing, is in December sometime, right?
December 1st is the
December
next Walleye
1st,
Tank. Yeah.
okay, okay. I remember Steve Ecker talking about it, but I don't know that he said an exact date. But, so that'll be the 4th one?
Yeah, the fourth
think
walleye
so.
tank.
It goes fast. It's
it
only been
does.
a year and a half, so that's since
Yeah.
it started.
Yeah, the first one we put together with 2 summer interns. One of them was me at the time,
Okay.
and then Steve, and that was it. We ran the whole thing just with 3 people, and it was chaotic but amazing. We got a lot of good turnout, and it's grown since then.
Yeah, no, I remember going to the first one. It was either in May or June last year. I can't quite remember. And like the whole auditorium was completely full, which was really impressive because you don't get that kind of turnout here in Rochester.
No.
And there were people from the Twin Cities, and it was just really a great thing to have here because we always hear about, who are the next entrepreneurs and how do you identify them, and this helps to bring those people out, and help develop companies too. So in the entrepreneurship class, you basically just work through like lean startup and
Yeah, it's based off the lean startup model. We bring groups of people in. Normally, it's populated by people from the grad school, people in professional development programs at Mayo, sometimes just lab techs. Anybody from the community can join too, and walk them through the basic components of the lean startup and encourage them to come up with their company ideas, form a founding team, do customer interviews, develop how they're going to bring their product to market, marketing, all that kind of stuff.
cool. So in your BioLinks, your bi-monthly seminars, you just had Chris Shad recently talking about Discovery Square. Now you'll have Perry Hackett in September, which is a huge deal. So tell everyone who Perry Hackett is. I'm sure people know, but.
So Perry Hackett is a University of Minnesota professor, and he was one of the team on the front line of gene editing at the University of Minnesota. And a lot of the other people in this community sprang out of his lab, like Steve Ecker and Carl Clark, all worked in association with Perry, Dave Largaspada, all these people whose names you may or may not recognize, but are all big in the gene editing community. And Perry co-founded a company, Recombinetics, which is working on developing first animal models for diseases, specifically in pigs. They did a lot of work developing some of the first animal models for a variety of different genetic conditions. And then they moved into trying to develop animals for the commercial market. And their first, big, widely recognized project was the development of the hornless dairy cow. So normally cattle have to have their horns removed when they're juveniles, which is to prevent them from injuring one another, and which is a very expensive process for the farmer and very painful process for the cow. So Recombinetics said, why don't we just make them not grow horns in the first place? And they successfully engineered the first hornless dairy cattle, and they could have herds within the next few years. And so that was a really exciting project.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting environment right now in gene editing with the salmon that, is now approved, the GE genetically engineered salmon that's available now for consumption in the U.S. So I think it's different field now than it was even 6 months ago or so. So it's an interesting time to be doing something like that. Yeah. So as part of BioLinks, you also talk about kind of trends in life science entrepreneurship or biomedical entrepreneurship. So what kind of things are you guys talking about now or are really interesting topics in biomedicine or life science field?
So first, locally, the big trend, a big exciting thing, at least in Rochester, is that the Office of Entrepreneurship is finally becoming a real organization after years of talking to people about it. And there will be an official office within Mayo that can help work on Rochester entrepreneurship. And they'll be trying to partner with the Tech Transfer Office in Mayo to work as a business accelerator, business educator, working with BioLinks, working with the classes to try to create a real entrepreneurship community using Mayo resources. On a wider scale, the big thing for biomedicine and just genetic engineering as an entrepreneurial field is that finally we're starting to get a wider base of both public and commercial acceptance of the technology.
Sure.
So while there's been, all these things of GMOs have to be labeled and people, like a lot of media creating fear about GMOs and all these kind of things, we're finally getting to the point where people are realizing this technology can be helpful. And that's just there's an explosion of ideas of how to bring gene editing into everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think with a lot of things in science, it just takes education, right? And, informing the public, because these things that people are creating are things that could happen by normal breeding. It just takes, decades. Like the cows, they could have bred hornless, that specific strain of hornless cow, but it probably would have taken 15, 20 years.
Exactly.
They can do it in, 15 months with this technology, and it's...
And it's interesting you bring that up, because that's actually some of the new language being used for, especially for like herd animals and plants, is accelerated breeding. And that's something you can do that kind of bridges the gap between traditional breeding and using gene editing to introduce a slight modification, but then you breed it into the population instead of making tons of genetically engineered animals. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so it's a good time for science. So for people interested in going to the BioLink seminars and Walleye Tank, what's the best way to find out that information?
So we have a website, www.biolinks.com or www.walleyetank.com, which is how we try to get the news out there. On the Walleye Tank website, you can view all of the past pitches given. You can view organizational materials from the past events. We're going to start ramping up and getting more and more content on there for the fall class and the ice fishing walleye competition for December. On the BioLinks website, you can find a rough description of what BioLinks is and a kind of introduction to the entrepreneur community and a schedule of events as we get those finalized and posted. And so you'll see more and more events appearing on that events calendar on that website.
Awesome. We look forward to coming to more events this year, and certainly the first one I went to a few weeks ago was really great. So looking forward to it, and thanks for doing something like this for the community here and helping to spur innovation, right?
Yeah, we'll be happy to have you there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this today.
Yeah, no problem.